So we have been working our way through this series. We're almost coming to an end. I think next week will be the last of the series, last message. But we've been thinking about faith and feelings, thinking about how we can thrive, not just spiritually, but also emotionally during this lockdown, this unique season in our history. And some weeks our feelings that we've kind of said, let's go after this one, have been really obvious. Anxiety, loneliness, and so on. But this week I was kind of wrestling with it. I was thinking, well, do we do this? Do we do that? There's a variety of feelings we haven't covered. And actually, the one that I sort of settled on, when I went into the passage that felt like the right passage, I ended up feeling unsettled about the feeling, but very, very thankful for the passage. And so this is kind of passage driven. So the emotion that drove me into it is one of the emotions that is sort of reflected in the passage, but it's not the main one. In fact, there's a variety of them. And I wonder if maybe that's a good thing to acknowledge. We've talked about emotions one at a time. All right, and so we've sort of said, well, loneliness or anxiety or whatever the feeling is, as if it's a contained thing, that this is the zone that I'm in, and then next week I might be in a different one. The reality, of course, is that during tough times especially, our feelings can go all over the place. We can have a whole mixture of feelings, can't we? We've said that our feelings are like the lights on the dashboard of our car. We don't drive simply by the information coming from those lights, neither do we ignore them and pretend they don't matter. They do matter. They tell us something about what's going on inside, and they are a prompt to connect. A prompt to connect with each other and a prompt to connect with God. And so thinking about the feelings that we may be experiencing, I wonder if any of these fit for you over these last days. Maybe not all, maybe none of them, but probably some. I wonder if you feel perhaps impatient, like you want to get on with getting back to work, or you want to get on with plans, or you want to get on with normal, but you find that you cannot speed time up. Or maybe you feel inadequate to face the complexities of the coming weeks, maybe uncertain of what the future holds, and you have that feeling that I can't do this. Maybe it's thinking about children going back to school, and as a parent you're thinking, well, hang on a minute, I don't like what they're going to have to face. I don't know how I'm going to cope, let alone them, with these new conditions. Maybe you're feeling just weak in the sense of, I can't face the uncertainties, I can't face the complexities, I can't face the lack of income, I just can't face what's coming. Maybe you feel troubled. You can't settle yourself. Maybe you feel insignificant, in the sense that you can't really make that much of a difference. The world is spinning on and things are happening and it's a global situation and you're just you and I'm just me, and what difference can we make anyway? There's a whole host of emotions. All of those, I think, are going to come out in the passage that we're looking at. Maybe some of those are coming up inside our hearts at this time. And I suppose the one thing that holds them all together, the one thing that is kind of like, a title that we can use for this message, which feeling are we talking about? I suppose we're talking about the feeling of feeling small. Like, I'm weak, I'm inadequate, I can't change the situation, I can't handle the situation, I can't speed things up, I can't make a difference. I'm just tiny, like a cork that's bouncing and bobbing along on the surface of a river that's running rapidly over some rocks. You feel just tiny in the midst of everything that's going on. Well, I want us to look at Psalm 31. Psalm 31. This is a psalm I've never really studied before, but it really is a blessing to spend some time in. So let's look at it together. Psalm 31. It's not the shortest, but it's not the longest either. It's a psalm of David. We don't know the situation when he wrote this, what caused him to communicate these words, but their clues are all through the text. And what we're going to find as we go through it is that there are a whole load of situations that he's facing. And more than that, there is a sense in which there's a progression from affliction to assurance. Or you could say a problem, but he moves on to a place of peace. In fact, he's going to do that twice. He's going to go from problem to peace in verses 1 to 8, and then he's going to go from problem kind of to peace again in verses 9 to 18, and then he's going to wrap things up at the end. And so let me read this psalm to you. I'm going to read the whole thing, and if you are able to follow along, that's great. If not, just listen. Psalm 31, a psalm of David. As I read, listen for the different situations that David is facing. The descriptions are right there in the passage. And as you hear them, maybe think about what emotion he would have been feeling, or maybe you would feel in these situations. Starting at verse 1. In you, O Lord, do I take refuge. Let me never be put to shame. In your righteousness, deliver me. Incline your ear to me, rescue me speedily. Be a rock of refuge for me, a strong fortress to save me. For you are my rock and my fortress, and for your name's sake you lead me and guide me. You take me out of the net they have hidden for me, for you are my refuge. Into your hand I commit my spirit. You have redeemed me, O Lord, faithful God. Verse 6, I hate those who pay regard to worthless idols. But I trust in the Lord. I will rejoice and be glad in your steadfast love, because you have seen my affliction. You have known the distress of my soul, and you have not delivered me into the hand of the enemy. You have set my feet in a broad place. Be gracious to me, O Lord, for I am in distress. My eye is wasted from grief, my soul and my body also. For my life is spent with sorrow, and my years with sighing. My strength fails because of my iniquity, and my bones waste away. Because of all my adversaries, I have become a reproach, especially to my neighbours, and an object of dread to my acquaintances. Those who see me in the street flee from me. I have been forgotten like one who is dead. I have become like a broken vessel, for I hear the whispering of many, terror on every side, as they scheme together against me, as they plot to take my life. But I trust in you, O Lord. I say, you are my God. My times are in your hand. Rescue me from the hand of my enemies and from my persecutors. Make your face shine on your servant. Save me in your steadfast love. O Lord, let me not be put to shame, for I call upon you. Let the wicked be put to shame. Let them go silently to Sheol. Let the lying lips be mute, which speak insolently against the righteous in pride and contempt. Verse 19. Oh, how abundant is your goodness, which you have stored up for those who fear you, and worked for those who take refuge in you. In the sight of the children of mankind. In the cover of your presence you hide them from the plots of men. You store them in your shelter from the strife of tongues. Blessed be the Lord, for he has wondrously shown his steadfast love to me when I was in a besieged city. I had said in my alarm, I am cut off from your sight, but you heard the voice of my pleas for mercy when I cried to you for help. Love the Lord, O you his saints. The Lord preserves the faithful, but abundantly repays the one who acts in pride. Be strong, and let your heart take courage, O you who wait for the Lord. Wonder if you spotted some of the situations that David was facing. We've got in the first few verses the sense that his life is in danger. Then after that, verses 6 to 8, his soul is in anguish. Verses 9 and 10, his body is weak. It's interesting. that he mentions his own sin at that point. So we've got others coming against him, his own sin creating problems for him. Verses 11 to 13, his friends have deserted him. Verses 14 to 18, lies are being told about him. And verses 19 and 20, enemies are plotting. This is a whole mixture of situations, and therefore a whole blend of emotions. I wonder if David felt inadequate, weak, maybe impatient with the situations that he was facing, maybe insignificant in light of the world that was swirling around him. Maybe David felt like he could not handle what was before him. Like I said, this psalm goes from problem to peace. How does David get there? It does it twice. He moves from this affliction to assurance, from problem to peace. But how does he move? I just want us to flag up 2 verses, really, just to zero our focus in and maybe give us something helpful for how we're feeling, whatever blend of emotions we may have right now. And the first of these 2 verses is verse 5. How do we find peace in difficult times? Verse 5, into your hand I commit my spirit, for you have redeemed me, O Lord, faithful God. Into your hand I commit my spirit. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? Maybe you remember that that's in Luke 23, verse 46, where Jesus is hanging on the cross, and he uses that verse at the end of his suffering to hand over his spirit to his Father. But actually it's more than that. I wonder if maybe the righteous cry of trust all the way through Psalm 31 is being reflected in Jesus' cry on the cross. Because what David's saying here is this: Lord, with everything that's going on, my spirit, my life, the real me, the depth of who I am, I commit it into your hand. I wonder if maybe that kind of hand-it over trust is something that we all need to learn. Maybe you watched the launch of the rocket last night, and it's fascinating, isn't it, just to kind of watch and see all of the science in action and the incredible thing going on there before our eyes again, and to watch Bob and Doug, as they are named, hence that's why they get called that, because it's their names, but they're called Bob and Doug continuously by the commentators, and there they are strapped in their seats, staring up effectively at a screen but towards space. And behind them there's something like 500,000 kilograms of highly explosive fuel and oxygen. I wonder what it's like to be where Bob and Doug were last night, just sitting there as the countdown gets lower and lower. And as it gets down to 10, 9, 8, I wouldn't be at all surprised. I mean, if it was me, knowing that in a few moments I'm going to be blasted out of this world and into space, or if anything goes wrong, these are my last few moments on Earth. Because really, there's no escape, right? There's nowhere to go with that much fuel beneath them. I wouldn't be at all surprised if 31 verse 5 was the kind of thing they might say in that moment. Lord, into your hand I commit my spirit. 3, 2, 1, we're off. I can certainly imagine praying that going into space. But actually we can pray that whatever we're facing. Maybe you've been kept isolated for these past 10 weeks, and you're now facing going out into the outside world, back to school, back to work, maybe going into the shops for the first time, maybe being around others, and maybe you're feeling anxious and nervous. Isn't it great to know that God holds our life in his hand? Our Redeemer, the one who is faithful to us, our faithful God, he holds our life in his hand. You know, I'm convinced that one of the greatest opportunities, maybe in our lifetime, is probably going to start to ease. In this sense, this lockdown is a moment in time where we have had opportunity to spend time with God. A lot of the normal excuses haven't applied. Now, we may have filled our time with other things, but we do have opportunity. Less travel, maybe less work, certainly less commuting, maybe less distraction, less sport, less, so much less going on, and beautiful weather. I wonder if maybe this is an opportunity for us to draw near to God and say, God, actually, you know what? Here are my fears. Here are my concerns. But I commit my life, my existence into your hand. Well, you drop down to verse 15 and he adds something else. In verse 14, talking about the people plotting, he says, but I trust in you, O Lord. I say, you are my God. My times are in your hand. My times are in your hand. That's not speaking of a sort of tick-tock clock, kind of the seconds passing sense of time. It's talking about the experiences of our life, the things that we have to go through. Our times, our experiences are in God's hands. None of us went into this year with a New Year's resolution that I really hope this year I can handle the pandemic lockdown with dignity and grace. Guaranteed, none of us thought that, because none of us knew it was coming. But God did. And God knew what he was leading us into as he led us into 2020. God knows what he's leading us into as we emerge from the other side of lockdown. God is able to carry us through whatever we have to experience because he knows what those experiences are before we even get there. My times are in your hand. Notice the same kind of language. Into your hand I commit my spirit, my life, my existence. You got it, Lord. My times, my experience. You're holding on. And maybe in the swirl of emotion that we may be feeling now or at certain points in time, maybe the best we can do is just go, oh, what is it again? God holds my existence and my experience. God holds my life and everything that I do. All that I am and all that I do, everything, he holds it. And the question then becomes, okay, how safe a pair of hands does he have? Pardon me for using a sports illustration, but I know some of you can relate to that. I've had the privilege of going to football matches over the past 3 decades. And whether you like the team I like or not is slightly irrelevant. Actually, it's completely irrelevant. But the one thing that actually I think anyone who's aware of football would agree is that I've had the chance to see 3 of the best goalkeepers. Absolutely phenomenal, world-class goalkeepers. And what you tend to say on the terraces as the game is going on is that, okay, he's got a safe pair of hands. Like if there's anyone in the world that's going to stop it when they break through, it's that man there. And yet the truth is, even though I've seen some amazing saves over the years, I've seen a fair number of goals go in against us. Even with the best goalkeeper in the world back in the 90s and one of the best defences and a phenomenal team, they still conceded goals. Because no human pair of hands is able to guard a goal, let alone carry a life. But when we're talking about God, we're not talking about human goalkeeping. We're talking about the safest pair of hands. And with his hands, he holds our existence as well as our experience. Now, I want you to notice something else about this psalm. Actually, probably most psalms. It does not go from problem direct to solution. That's the way we think, isn't it? That's what we expect. That's what we want. God, I've got a problem. Give me a solution. My body is weak. Heal it. Or I've got enemies. Stop them. I've been lied about. Vindicate me publicly. That's the kind of logic that we have, and it makes sense. But it's not really the logic that the Bible tends to give us. Instead of going problem to solution, often the Bible takes us from problem to peace, from affliction to assurance, from troubled times to the tranquility that comes not because the problems are gone, but because who we're together with. It's a really significant thing, and I want you to see that here. For example, let me just show you one detail. In verse 5, we have that, into your hand I commit my spirit. Drop down to verse 7, right after that. He says, I will rejoice and be glad in your steadfast love. Go down to verse 15, my times are in your hand. Drop down to verse 16, right after that. Make your face shine on your servant, save me in your steadfast love. Drop down to verse 21. Blessed be the Lord, for he has wondrously shown his steadfast love to me when I was in a besieged city. See that 3 times David is celebrating the steadfast love of God. It's the loving grip of God on our lives. Just that sense that everything I am and everything I do is held in the safest pair of hands, and he loves me. You see, that's really what our difficulties are there for. What we tend to think is that difficulties are there to just shape our character so that we're tougher, or difficulties come so they can be taken away in a miraculous answer to prayer. But what if difficulties come actually not to be taken away, and not just to shape us, but to push us closer to the one who's holding us? What if all the tension and the anxiety related to your income, related to your health, related to your work, your employment, your family, everything that's coming, all the uncertainties, what if the whole package is designed to push you up close to God? To see more than you've ever seen before that you are held in the safest pair of hands. And that actually, when we're feeling small in the face of circumstances, we can trust the God who is holding on to us. Our tendency is to think, God, take the problem away, and then I can carry on as normal. We've talked a lot about normal, haven't we, with this lockdown? When this is over, we can get back to normal. I think now we're realizing it's going to be a new normal. A new normal that maybe includes social distancing, that maybe includes infection rate alerts, that maybe includes certain limitations and maybe wearing of masks or something, things that we would have never considered possible before. There's maybe a new normal coming. But I wonder if for us as a church, as individuals, as families, can there be a new normal? Not just in the face of those things that the government might impose, but a new normal in the sense of our problems are not seen simply as something that God needs to remove so that we can go back to normal. That maybe normal is no longer living comfortably and living easily, living as if we can handle things and will go to God when there's difficulties. Maybe it would be better for us if we began every day saying, Lord, I need you. I need you today. I need you to protect my life, if that's your will, or take me home, if that's your will. I need you to provide for my family. Give us this day our daily bread, in a way that maybe we've never had to pray before. There's a whole load of things that maybe in the new normal could actually be good for us if the circumstances of life are allowed to not only stir our emotions, get the lights flashing on the dashboard, but those can be a prompt to us, a prompt to connect with God, to say, Lord, into your hand I commit my spirit. And Lord, my times are in your hands. And you've got the safest pair of hands, and so I trust you with my existence and with my experience, with all that I am and all that I do. I'm trusting you, Lord. And so that seems to be where David is getting to in this psalm. And at the end of the psalm, the final 2 verses, he kind of gives to us a sort of a spillover application. Like, okay, here's the bottom line, guys. Verse 23, there's 3 things here. Firstly, love the Lord, O you his saints. Love the Lord. Just think about that. Isn't that an amazing thing? It's not something we can manufacture, is it? We can't just work up more love for God. No, love the Lord is a response to his love for us. Verse 7, verse 16, verse 21. God's steadfast love towards us in every circumstance, in every difficulty, in everything that causes us to feel small or weak or inadequate, in every difficult moment, God is faithful and loyal in his love to us, and so love him back. Of course, we live after the cross. We live after Jesus came into this world and went to the cross and died in our place, the ultimate demonstration of God's love for us. God demonstrated his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. He hung on that cross. He cried out, "Into your hands I commit my spirit," for us. And so we, of all people, should respond like David says here, "Love the Lord, all you, his saints." More than that, verse 24, he says, "Be strong. Be strong and let your heart take courage." That tells me that the problems that David was experiencing weren't all taken away. If he'd gone from having his life threatened and having people plotting against him and having a weak body and all of the different things that he described, to having everything cozy and comfortable, if the enemies were defeated, if his body was vibrant and vital and healthy, if every relationship was fully restored and Dave was living the life of ease, then I don't think Dave, that was very familiar, wasn't it? I don't think that David would be saying to us, "Be strong and let your heart take courage." He'd say, "Trust the Lord and all will be well," as he puffed on his cigar, but he doesn't. He says, "Love the Lord and be strong." Be strong because the circumstances are still coming. The difficulties are still there. Be strong and let your heart take courage, all you who wait for the Lord. We need to love the Lord in response to his love for us. We need to be strengthened in the Lord to face all that he wants to carry us through. And we need to wait for the Lord. What if our problems are not primarily an opportunity for God to answer prayer in miraculous ways? What if our problems are not primarily to shape our character so that we become better versions of ourselves? There is some of both of those things, but what if our problems are there to push us up against God, to realize that actually, Lord, what I need is not primarily a healthier body or primarily a fuller bank account or primarily more security for the future. What I need, Lord, primarily is you. I wonder if maybe we should start the day with our Bibles open and our hearts engaged, but with a sense of waiting. Maybe God doesn't like to do things as quick as we like. We kind of, we're a fast generation. We want everything happening quickly, don't we? But what if God is moving things just a little bit slower than we're comfortable with? What if God's answers to prayer take a little bit longer than feels right to us? I remember years ago a man preaching and he said, most of us walk at 4 miles an hour, but God walks at 3 miles an hour. He just seems to be that little bit slower than we are. And yet he knows exactly what he's doing. He's never early, he's never late, he's always just on time. So wait for the Lord. Be patient, trusting him, looking to him, longing for him. It's a beautiful psalm, isn't it? A psalm with 2 hands in it. Into your hand I commit my life, and my times and experiences are in your hand. And as we entrust ourselves to him, we can experience this same assurance that David does in this psalm. And we can take on board the advice that he gives. Love God in response to his love for you. Be strengthened by God for all that you face, and through it all, wait for the Lord. Just before we finish, can we sneak over to the New Testament? I know that's, not my normal style, but I want to share something that really does connect. Looking at Philippians this week for a life group, and had a couple of opportunities to work my way through Philippians again, and just fascinating. Love this letter. So this was written about 30 years after Jesus was on earth, written by Paul to a church in Philippi, a church that had helped him, had cared for him, had sent him financial support and so on. Chapter 4, verse 10, he says, I'm really pleased that you're able to help me again. He's kind of saying thank you for the gift that you've sent. And he said, you were always concerned, but you didn't have opportunity to show it. Now you've had opportunity to show it. But let me clarify. Verse 11, I'm not speaking about being in need. I'm not dropping hints or anything like that. Because I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound in any and every circumstance. The idea there, I think, is for rich or for poor, in sickness and in health, for good and for bad, when things are just going swimmingly and when things just seem to be dragging you under. He says, I've learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. You get this sense, the rhythm of it. It's good and bad in every situation, in every circumstance. Look at verse 13. It's a famous verse, but it's often misused. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Paul is saying here in this one verse essentially what we've found in Psalm 31. Essentially what David is saying in the final verse of the psalm, be strengthened in the Lord. Now, often when Philippians 4:13 gets quoted, it gets quoted in connection with some kind of human endeavor, as if it's sort of a promise that if I can just claim it and believe it enough, then I can do anything. If I want to, climb higher or achieve greater or do some superhuman feat of strength, I've just got to quote Philippians 4:13 to myself and work myself up, and then I can do whatever the thing is. But that's not what it's saying. It's not me trying to lift an impossible weight with God over to the side throwing gel energy packs towards me. No, it's saying I can do, or literally there, prevail. I can wrestle with whatever the circumstance may be, and it may be tough and it may be hard, and I can prevail. I can come out the other side. How? Because of my strength? Not at all. But because of him who strengthens me. As we're moving forward, Philippians 4:13 could be a verse for us as we think about the uncertainties of what lies ahead, the challenges before us, individually, corporately, locally, nationally, globally. We can say, you know what? I want to lean into God. I want to love God, so that I can find my strength in him as I wait for him, recognizing that all of these challenges are there to push me up against him. There's a swirl of emotions, and maybe the lights are flashing all over the dashboard. But even if they are, they're there as a prompt to connect. When you're feeling small, weak, inadequate, impatient, when you're feeling troubled, when you can't see how you're going to handle the things that lie ahead or how to navigate it, when you don't feel like you're going to have the strength in yourself to do what is going to be asked of you, whatever the circumstances may be, trust the God who loves you and who is holding your life in his hands. Everything I am and everything I do, all of my existence and all of my experience is held in the safest pair of hands.